the family's invisible pillar, the one who pays the bills, arranges doctor's visits, and keeps everyone's secrets. Yet I'm never thanked, only blamed. It's a role I stepped into so quietly I hardly noticed until it was too late. I'm the responsible one, the steady hand no one really asks for, but everyone depends on. Linda Clark, my mother-in-law, thrives on my sacrifices. She basks in the spotlight, charming relatives and friends alike, while I'm left in the shadows, quietly absorbing the weight of her demands. Just last month, during a family holiday, Linda's elderly father needed urgent medical care, a last-minute $1,200 bill that no one else would touch. Without a second thought, I covered it, wiping away the numbers from my bank account as if they were nothing. And what did I get in return? A public scolding from Linda for always being late to family dinners, as if my time and presence were less valuable than hers. I have a secret power, though. A steady nursing career that nobody suspects gives me financial independence none of them realize I wield. It's my quiet insurance against total collapse, but lately it feels more like a chain than a shield. Beneath my calm exterior, a growing weariness gnaws at me. The endless cycle of giving without acknowledgement, of being scapegoated for problems I didn't cause. And then there's the hospital call at 4 a.m., a moment that hasn't yet crossed their minds, but it has crossed mine. It's that call that will shake the foundations of everything I've silently endured. I just haven't figured out how yet. Looking back, I can pinpoint the moment it all began, the fracture in what should have been a supportive family. It was in my early 20s, just after I'd graduated and moved back home for a while. There was a family barbecue, the kind of gathering where everyone's roles get etched in stone without ceremony. My younger brother, Mark, was the golden child, basking in the glow of Linda's pride. She praised his charisma and charm loudly, with a gleam in her eye, while I stood on the sidelines, the too serious one nobody quite knew what to do with. I had just earned my nursing license, a milestone I was quietly proud of, but Linda barely acknowledged it. Instead, she boasted about what Mark was going to accomplish, as if my hard work was invisible. I tried to rationalize the imbalance, telling myself that family loyalty sometimes meant sacrifice, without recognition. I remember vividly the sting of that first financial crack. My first paycheck went straight to covering a $5,000 car repair for Mark. When I hesitated, Linda's voice was cold, but firm. "You're the responsible one. You'll understand someday." It felt like a burden disguised as trust. Later, when Eric's student loans piled up, I covered another $10,000 without a word, even as Linda whispered to me in private about his lack of ambition, blaming me quietly for his shortcomings. Meanwhile, I was the one organizing family events, managing crises, holding everything together. Yet none of it mattered. Linda's favoritism was like a shadow swallowing my efforts whole, and her verbal put-downs chipped away at any hope I had that love and sacrifice would be reciprocated. Instead, self-doubt crept in. Tangled with a growing resentment I tried desperately to keep hidden. Over the years, my sacrifices became concrete, heavy with numbers and time lost. I loaned Linda's family over $50,000, $15,000 to cover medical bills, $20,000 for home repairs on her aging parents' house, and another $15,000 in informal emergency cash handouts when things got desperate. I postponed my own graduate studies twice to care for Linda's mother after her stroke, putting my dreams on hold for a family that barely noticed. Eric, my husband, tries to be my ally, but he's often caught between his mother's manipulations and my quiet protests, overwhelmed and unsure how to stand up to Linda. Lisa Reynolds is one of the few who sees me clearly. A nurse colleague and family friend, she admires my resilience and hints at the secret power I hold through my steady income and professional skills, a power I haven't fully acknowledged myself. Yet despite my efforts to prove my worth, Linda's criticisms only sharpen. At a recent family wedding, I wore a $3,000 dress I'd saved for carefully, only for Linda to sneer, "That's a bit plain, don't you think?" The words cut deeper than any financial loss. When I tried to stand my ground, her dismissals were subtle but brutal. A reminder that no matter what I do, I'm still trapped in an invisible cage. The line between kindness and cruelty blurred painfully for me at a summer reunion with the extended family. I arrived with Eric and Lisa, hopeful for a peaceful evening, even offering to organize a toast to celebrate Aunt Margaret's retirement. But Linda, with that sharp smile of hers, publicly dismissed my effort. "Let's not hear from the cash cow tonight," she said, loud enough for half the room to chuckle awkwardly. My cheeks burned with humiliation, and I tried to respond, voice trembling. "I'm just trying to help," but she cut me off, her mocking smile like a blade. Eric looked uncomfortable but stayed silent, while Lisa's quiet glance offered a sliver of comfort amid the sting. Afterward, I told myself Linda was joking, that it was just family teasing. But the humiliation clung to me, festering beneath the surface. It shook my confidence, but somewhere inside, a tiny spark of resistance flickered. I promised myself to be more cautious, more guarded. The seed of rebellion was planted, though the power dynamic remained firmly in Linda's favor. For now. The moment I showed the slightest crack in my armor, Linda pounced. At the next family gathering, the room was thick with that stale mix of stale perfume and simmering tension. I caught Linda's eyes from across the table, a sharp glint of triumph hidden behind her polite smile. It started subtly, whispers she let slip just loud enough for the right ears to hear. "Sophia's been careless with money," she murmured to my aunts, her voice honeyed but poisonous, "always managing her finances poorly. It's a concern." The words didn't just float away. They landed in the laps of the people who mattered most. And suddenly, I was the family's financial villain. Mark was the first to join the chorus, echoing Linda's accusations with a smirk that felt like a slap. "Sophia's always been controlling, never satisfied," he said, "like she's doing us all a favor, but really, she's just ungrateful." The aunts nodded, faces tight with judgment. It was like walking through a minefield of cold eyes and whispered betrayals. When I confronted Linda later, hoping for a private conversation, she twisted it all on me with the ease of a professional. "You're making mountains out of molehills, dear," she said, her smile saccharine. "Maybe you're just too sensitive." Even Eric, caught in the crossfire, began to pull away, his usual warmth replaced by a cautious distance. I saw the way he flinched when Linda spoke, the silent pressure she applied until he retreated into silence. I was left isolated, doubting my own reality as their collective voices drowned out my quiet protests. The family's web tightened around me, suffocating in its closeness. Yet beneath the smothering pressure, my secret remained untouched. My steady income and financial independence, a power I hadn't yet dared to wield. But for now, I was alone, the accused, the scapegoat, the forgotten one in a family that had turned its back. The weight of their disdain pressed down, but somewhere deep inside, the ember of resistance flickered stubbornly, refusing to die. I thought maybe, just maybe, there was a way out of this tangled mess without burning bridges. So I gathered every scrap of courage I had and arranged a family mediation, hoping a neutral voice might cut through the noise. I printed bank statements, caregiving logs, and everything I'd quietly amassed over the years. $50,000 in loans and countless hours of care. Sitting around that polished conference table, I laid it all out calmly, asking for acknowledgement, fairness, a chance for us to heal and move forward as a family. At first, it felt like maybe, just maybe, they'd hear me. But Linda's performance began almost immediately. She painted me as the aggressor, her tone sweet, but laced with venom. "Sophia's been accusatory and disrespectful," she claimed, eyes wide with feigned hurt. The mediator, swayed by Linda's practiced charm and the palpable family tension, gently suggested I soften my tone, that maybe I was pushing too hard. Eric sat silently beside me, his gaze dropping to the floor, unwilling or unable to defend me. The words hit me like icy water. I was not the victim here, but the problem to be fixed. Walking away from that session, a heavy fog settled over me. The fragile thread of hope snapped, replaced by a new, bitter reality. My family saw me as demanding and unreasonable. Linda wasted no time spreading that narrative, her whispers poisoning the well further. The isolation deepened, the distance between us growing until it felt insurmountable. I left that room feeling smaller, unheard, defeated, but beneath the bruises, a quiet, simmering resolve was taking root. If peace meant silence and submission, then peace was no longer an option I could afford. The next blow came unexpected, sharp and public. Eric's father was in the hospital, a time when I thought we'd all rally together. I had arranged every hospital visit, taken time off work, and even paid over $5,000 in emergency expenses without complaint. But Linda seized the moment to launch her cruelest attack yet. In the sterile hospital corridor, with nurses and family friends hovering nearby, she accused me loudly of neglecting my family duties. "She's too busy with her job," Linda spat, "always putting work first, like she doesn't care." The words echoed in the sterile air, a public humiliation that cut deeper than any private insult. I felt the weight of their gazes, some surprised, some judgmental, others quietly complicit. Eric's hesitation to defend me was a jagged shard twisting in my chest, his silence louder than any words could have been. The gossip began to spread, even reaching my workplace, where whispers questioned my priorities and professionalism. The attack wasn't random. It was calculated, a strategic blow meant to undermine both my personal and professional life. That day, standing in the hospital hallway, the humiliation was a physical ache, a cold knot in my stomach that refused to loosen. But amidst the bitterness, something shifted inside me. The cruelty wasn't just an insult, it was a call to action. I could no longer be the invisible caretaker, the silent victim. The stakes were higher now, and my resolve hardened like steel forged in fire. The family's cruelty had exposed its true face, and I knew, deep down, that the next steps I took would define the rest of my life. I made one last, desperate attempt, an attempt to bridge the growing chasm before it became a canyon impossible to cross. I sat down with Linda, my voice steady but filled with exhaustion. "I need respect and honesty," I said quietly. "I can't keep sacrificing for a family that won't stand with me." I laid out everything, my financial support, my time, my care, and asked, plainly, for a fair division of responsibilities and repayment of what was owed. For a moment, I thought I saw a flicker of hesitation in her eyes, but then, with a cold smirk, she replied, "Maybe if you were less needy, you wouldn't feel so used." The words hit me like a slap, sharp and stinging. Eric was there, watching, his silence a confirmation of his mother's cruelty and his own allegiance. The moment was a line drawn in the sand, clear and unforgiving. No more pretense, no more hope for easy reconciliation. The plea for fairness met with cold dismissal, the hope for understanding crushed beneath Linda's smirk. I felt the sting of rejection, a profound ache of being unseen and unheard, but alongside it came a strange clarity, a brutal truth. Peaceful resolution was no longer possible. The family I'd once hoped to heal had made their choice, and now, so would I. The aftermath hit me like a storm. Linda's whispers multiplied, poisoning the air around me with a venom I couldn't escape. I had always been the family's quiet pillar, the one who kept things smooth and steady, but now I was painted as unstable, a troublemaker stirring up conflict where none existed. "She's forcing problems," Linda told relatives with a practiced sweetness, her words sinking like icy daggers beneath the surface of every family gathering. Eric recoiled, overwhelmed by the escalating drama. The warmth that once existed between us grew cold. His eyes darted away when I sought reassurance, his voice hesitant, strained. Even Lisa, who had been my ally, pulled back with a warning that stung. "Tread lightly, Sophia. It's a delicate dance, and you don't want to trip." I found myself increasingly isolated. Invitations to family dinners stopped arriving, replaced by hushed conversations and sideways glances. Flying monkeys, those relatives who parroted Linda's version of events, flocked to her side, their loyalty blinding them to the truth. The financial toll became unbearable. Linda delayed the repayment of loans I had extended for years, and with a smile that never reached her eyes, she demanded more help, wrapped in the guise of family loyalty. The weight of unpaid bills, emotional exhaustion, and social exile crushed me. I questioned everything. Was I truly the problem they claimed I was? A vulnerable moment at the hospital with my ailing father twisted into another weapon in Linda's arsenal. She insinuated I was neglectful, that my nursing job made me cold and distant. Her accusations echoed in the sterile halls, their coldness seeping into my bones. The nurses who witnessed the scene exchanged uncomfortable looks. Some held their tongues, others whispered behind my back. The emotional weight threatened to break me, yet beneath the suffocating layers of pain, a faint ember of defiance glowed. Stubborn and fragile, I clung to it, unsure whether it was hope or desperation, but it was enough to keep me from falling entirely into the abyss. That night, as I lay awake nursing a heart heavy with self-doubt, the silence pressed in, thick and suffocating. The family I had given everything to had turned their backs, leaving me stranded in a sea of betrayal and loneliness. My phone's screen glowed with missed calls and texts, the few remaining voices fading like echoes in a cavern. I felt invisible, less than a shadow. Yet, even in my darkest hour, the ember smoldered, a spark that whispered of something more than quiet suffering. It was a seed of something cold and resolute, buried deep inside, waiting for the right moment to ignite. The shrill ring of my phone at 4 a.m. shattered the fragile quiet. My father's heart attack. The hospital became a blur of sterile corridors and antiseptic smells, but the shock didn't stop there. When I arrived, a nurse pulled me aside, her voice low but urgent. "The emergency contact listed isn't your mother. It's Elisa Reynolds." The name hit me like a punch. Lisa was there, tears streaking her face, barely holding herself together at my father's bedside. She revealed a story that chilled me to the bone. Her mother was another victim of Linda's manipulations, drained financially and emotionally, abandoned when the debts couldn't be repaid. The room felt heavy with unspoken truths as Lisa's story spilled out. Nurses, doctors, and family members alike watched as the fragile facade I'd maintained crumbled into dust. The hospital visit, meant to be a moment of vulnerability and unity, became a brutal unveiling of betrayal. I stood there, breath catching in my throat, as the weight of Linda's cruelty settled like a stone in my chest. This wasn't an isolated wound. It was a festering pattern, a legacy of exploitation that spanned years and families. Something inside me cracked that night. The exhausted caregiver, the silent sufferer, shattered into pieces. A fierce, cold clarity surged through my veins. A quiet but unyielding vow. No more. No more sacrifices wasted. No more being the invisible forgotten one. The raw betrayal fueled a transformation from victim to strategist. I felt the first icy tendrils of calculated withdrawal curl around my heart, promising a future where I would no longer be prey to Linda's poison. In the stillness that followed, I confronted the years of pain and solitude. Memories flooded back, unpaid loans stacking up like a mountain, caregiving that stole my own dreams, the sting of public humiliations, and Eric's silences when I needed him most. Anger simmered beneath the exhaustion, a slow-burning fire ignited by the realization that I had been caught in a toxic cycle. Linda's exploitation was relentless, and the family's complicity had been just as damaging. But now, I saw it clearly. I was not powerless. My financial independence, my nursing career, my slowly building awareness, they were weapons I had yet to wield. The betrayal was personal, yes, but it was also systemic. A cruel dance of manipulation and control played out across years and relationships. For too long, I had been invisible, unvalued, disposable. The anger that rose inside me was not just rage, it was resolve. I gave, and they never saw me. I whispered to the empty room. It's time they felt the loss. That quiet declaration marked the turning point. No longer would I bleed silently for a family that dismissed my pain. The path ahead wasn't about confrontation, but strategic withdrawal. I was ready to reclaim my worth, piece by piece. The first step came when I finally confided in Lisa. We sat together, sharing not just stories, but a shared understanding of Linda's manipulations. Lisa, with her quiet strength born of her own scars, became my confidant and strategist. We articulated a plan that felt radical after years of silent endurance. No more financial bailouts, No more emotional availability. No more draining myself for a family that refused to see me. It was time to reclaim control over my resources, my time, and my energy. When I told Eric, my voice steady but resolute, I'm done being the family ATM and emotional doormat, I saw a flicker of conflict in his eyes. He was torn, caught between his mother's grip and his loyalty to me. But beneath the hesitation, I sensed support. He agreed to respect the boundaries I was setting, to stand by me even if the family stormed around us. My strategy crystallized in that moment. The cold withdrawal. I would start small, stop the loans, limit visits, refuse the emotional labor that had become my chain. The first preparatory steps were simple but powerful: securing my finances, asserting boundaries at work and home, and building a fortress of self-respect. That conversation, quiet but seismic, shifted me from emotional reaction to strategic planning. Bolstered by Lisa's support and Eric's tentative alliance, I felt a new strength rising within. The road ahead was uncertain, fraught with pain and conflict, but I was no longer the invisible one. I was becoming a force to reckon with, a woman who would no longer sacrifice herself for a family that didn't deserve her. The ember inside had grown into a flame, cold, clear, and unyielding. I sat cross-legged on the floor of our quiet living room. A stack of papers fanned out before me like a battlefield map. Bank statements, loan agreements, caregiving logs. Every scrap of evidence I'd accumulated over these long years was laid bare. The weight of it all pressed down like a physical force. But beneath the exhaustion, a flicker of something new, control, stirred. I began to trace the threads of dependency, untangling the web Linda and the family had spun around me. Linda's elderly parents, for instance, relied heavily on me to manage their medications. Without my calls and reminders, their pill schedules would unravel, a vulnerability Linda exploited without the faintest hesitation. Eric's father, too, depended on me for rides to doctor's appointments, often last-minute and urgent, tying me to a role I had never asked for but could never refuse. And then there was the financial reality: unreturned loans totaling over $50,000, quietly propping up a family that never once acknowledged the sacrifice. I consulted with a legal advisor, someone neutral, to understand what protections I could actually put in place. The advice was clear: tighten permissions, separate my finances, formalize any future loans, and most importantly, regain control over my own resources. My nursing license, once just my livelihood, revealed itself as a hidden leverage point. It was the one constant that no one could take away. For years, I had underestimated its power, seeing it merely as a job, not a shield. The realization stoked a fire in me. Linda's dominance depended entirely on my silence and compliance. If I withdrew, if I stopped feeding the cycle, her power would wane. Quietly, I started small. I missed a call here, declined a favor there, always soft and calm, never confrontational. I watched Linda's face carefully during our exchanges, noting the slight frustration growing beneath her practiced sweetness. She hadn't caught on yet. The family's parasitic relationship was clear as day to me now. They drained me until nothing remained. But this time, I wasn't going to collapse beneath it. I was gathering strength, weaponizing my invisibility into something formidable. The calm before the storm settled around me like a cloak, and beneath it, a new plan took shape. I was no longer just the family's caretaker. I was becoming the architect of my own boundaries. Weeks slipped by as I moved silently, methodically. I changed passwords on online banking accounts, shifting emergency funds into a new, secret account that only I could access. The sense of control was intoxicating. At work, I preemptively informed my manager about potential family emergencies, laying groundwork to protect my job from any fallout. I started subtly reducing my availability for their endless calls and unplanned visits, citing heavier workloads and unpredictable shifts. Each "sorry, I can't" was a small victory, a reclaiming of my time and energy. Yet, I wore my usual warm smile when I was around Linda, masking every calculated withdrawal with practiced ease. To her, I was still the dependable daughter-in-law, the sweet nurse balancing it all, none the wiser that a quiet rebellion was underway. Lisa became my confidant during these weeks, our conversations frequent and filled with shared understanding. Her presence was a balm, a reminder that I wasn't alone in this fight. We exchanged updates and strategies, reinforcing each other's resolve. At home, Eric and I had more honest talks than ever before. He was starting to see the damage Linda's manipulation had done, not just to me, but to their fragile family dynamic. He listened quietly as I explained my need for boundaries, the urgency behind them. Though hesitant, he committed to standing by me, a reluctant ally in this storm. My preparation was meticulous. Every thread I had woven into their lives was now cataloged and ready to be pulled. Beneath the calm facade, a cold, steady determination settled in. The waiting was almost unbearable, but I knew this silence was the powder keg's fuse. Soon, everything would ignite. The day Lisa showed up at the family gathering was like a sharp crack in the brittle facade we all pretended held. Linda's smile faltered the instant Lisa walked into the room, that same quiet strength in Lisa's eyes unmistakable. The air thickened as Lisa confronted Linda in front of everyone. Her voice was steady but firm, recounting a story that stunned me into silence. Years ago, Linda had exploited Lisa's mother, financially drained her, manipulated her emotionally, before casting them aside like worn-out shadows. The room fell into a stunned hush, the veneer of civility cracking as whispers erupted. Linda's calm, cultivated persona splintered, revealing cracks of panic and anger beneath. Watching Linda scramble to salvage the moment was almost surreal. Her attempts to dismiss Lisa as a troublemaker fell flat against the weight of shared memories and witnesses present. Eric, Mark, and distant relatives who had only glimpsed the family's undercurrents. The revelation reshaped everything I thought I knew about Linda. It was no longer just my personal betrayal. It was part of a sprawling pattern of exploitation, a legacy of manipulation stretching back years and across families. The shock of Lisa's story sent ripples through the gathering, igniting cracks in Linda's carefully constructed empire of control. As I looked around, I realized the shift was palpable. Some family members exchanged uncertain glances, their loyalties quietly wavering. Eric's conflicted expression mirrored my own mix of relief and dread. Here was undeniable proof of Linda's parasitic tendencies, and the truth was unraveling in plain sight. With Lisa at my side, we formed an unspoken alliance, our shared history a formidable weapon against Linda's calculated cruelty. The urgency to act, to dismantle the cycle of abuse, surged through me. The cold withdrawal plan I had been nurturing gained new momentum and a sharper moral clarity. This was no longer just about reclaiming my dignity. It was about exposing a far deeper rot. The family's tangled web of lies and exploitation was beginning to unravel, and I was ready to pull the threads. The morning after the gathering, I felt a sharpened resolve pulse through my veins. It was time to begin. I stopped the loan payments immediately. The silence on the other end of the phone a stark contrast to years of pleading and excuses. I sent a carefully worded message to family members. I would no longer provide caregiving assistance. The words felt heavy but liberating as I pressed send. At the care facility where Eric's father stayed, I informed them I would no longer coordinate transportation. The practicalities of withdrawal were painful, but necessary. Linda noticed the changes, her eyes narrowing with suspicion, but she chalked it up to stress, or my busy schedule. She hadn't yet pieced together the deliberate nature of my actions. I began reducing my phone responses to Linda and Mark, refusing to engage in their emotional manipulation or financial demands. The silence was deafening, an unspoken wall rising between us. Lisa's support remained steadfast and public, backing me during family events and reinforcing boundaries. The strain on Linda was visible, her usual confidence replaced with frantic efforts to find alternative caregivers and funding. The family's dependence on me, once invisible, now gaped like an open wound. Watching the cracks form in Linda's control gave me a quiet satisfaction I hadn't experienced in years. The power balance was shifting, subtle, but unmistakable. I still bore the weight of their resentment, but beneath it I felt lighter, freer. The consequences of my withdrawal rippled through the family like tremors beneath a fragile foundation. Linda's scramble to fill the void I left exposed the parasitic nature of her relationship with me. The entitlement, once hidden behind charm and manipulation, was laid bare. Yet, none of them connected the dots fully. They saw the effects, but not the source. Eric's silence lingered, but his conflicted gaze softened, a quiet acknowledgement of the truth I'd long carried alone. For the first time in years, I felt the power of my own boundaries, not loud or confrontational, but steady and unyielding. The family I had once thought unbreakable was vulnerable without me, and I was no longer invisible. The ember of defiance had become a flame, cold and clear, burning away the old shadows. The day of the family dinner arrived like a storm gathering on the horizon, tense, full of unspoken undercurrents, and thick with the weight of years I'd carried alone. The dining room was crowded. Relatives filled every chair, the air heavy with the mingling scents of roasted chicken and polished wood. I felt the familiar churn in my stomach. Not fear, but a quiet steeliness settling in. This was the moment I had prepared for in whispered conversations with Lisa, and in the long, solitary hours sifting through ledgers of unpaid loans and caregiving logs. Tonight, I would make the invisible visible. Linda was radiant as always, her practiced smile the kind that made you trust her before anything else, but her eyes flickered with something I'd never seen before: unease. Eric sat beside her, shifting uncomfortably, while Mark lounged like he was bored by the whole affair. I took a slow breath, feeling every eye settle on me as I rose from my chair, the papers clutched firmly in my hand. "I think it's time we talked," I said, my voice calm but unwavering. The room quieted instantly, a heavy silence blanketing the table. For years, I've been the family's unseen safety net, financially, emotionally, practically. But I'm no longer your financial savior or emotional punching bag. I unfolded the loan agreements and caregiving records I'd meticulously compiled, passing copies to Eric, Mark, and a few relatives near the front. Their faces shifted. Surprise, disbelief, a flicker of recognition dawning. Linda's composure cracked. The smile faltered, replaced by a quick, tight-lipped glare. "These are just numbers," she scoffed weakly, but her voice lacked conviction. "I'm done enabling your exploitation," I continued, voice steady. $50,000 in unpaid loans, countless hours of caregiving without so much as a thank you. I've documented everything. From now on, I'm withdrawing all support, financial, emotional, and practical, until respect and fairness become real. Eric stood, surprising me. "She's right," he said, voice low but firm. "It's time things changed." The power shifted palpably. Linda faltered, scrambling for words, but the room was no longer hers to command. The family's reaction was a complex blend. Some shocked, others quietly relieved. I felt an unfamiliar surge of strength, the weight of years lifting as I declared my boundaries openly, irrevocably. This was my champagne moment. The moment control was wrested from Linda's grasp and placed firmly in my own hands. In the days that followed, Linda's world began to unravel with a terrifying swiftness. The calls started almost immediately, pleas dripping with false contrition, promises to change, to make amends. But I held my ground. The cold withdrawal I'd rehearsed now a living reality. Attempts at mediation came next. Family members who once turned a blind eye now stepped in, hoping to patch the widening rift. But I was no longer alone. Lisa's steady presence and Eric's growing support formed an unbreakable front. Linda's financial troubles became public knowledge as unpaid bills surfaced, whispers spreading like wildfire. The family's tolerance for her parasitic ways evaporated, replaced by a cautious distance that left her isolated and grasping. Her desperation grew frantic and raw. Lavish apologies arrived by text, bouquets appeared on our doorstep, and her charm offensive spun wildly, desperate to regain footing. But I saw through it all, the manipulation patterns I'd come to know so well. I was unmoved, my resolve a fortress built on years of pain and preparation. Family members who once enabled her now exchanged wary glances, their respect for me a stark contrast to the disdain Linda faced. The consequences for her were swift and tangible: lost control, eroded reputation, and severed access to my resources. Watching Linda's empire crumble was a grim satisfaction, a testament to the power of boundaries when wielded with clarity and resolve. Linda's response escalated in a chilling crescendo. Threatening messages, frantic calls to old allies, and attempts to sow discord between Eric and me. She even stooped to spreading rumors at my workplace. Subtle poison meant to undermine my nursing license and credibility. But I was prepared. Legal counsel stood ready, and workplace advocates heard my side clearly. Each attempt at sabotage bounced off the walls of my steadfast composure. Eric, having witnessed the raw truth of his mother's manipulations, stood firmly by my side, refusing to be swayed by guilt or lies. The family rallied, their voices joining mine in condemning Linda's behavior. Her isolation deepened, her desperation turning bitter and hollow. The cold withdrawal I enacted was not just strategic but surgical, precise and unyielding. No more damage could be done because I had reclaimed control entirely. The balance of power had shifted irrevocably, and Linda's reign of exploitation was broken. In the stillness that followed the storm, I found a peace I hadn't known in years. Eric and I rebuilt on new foundations, honesty and respect replacing silence and avoidance. Lisa remained a steadfast ally, a living reminder that shared hardship could forge unbreakable bonds. The toxic ties of the past were severed. I no longer poured my energy into a family that consumed without gratitude. My nursing career flourished, and with graduate studies on the horizon, I reclaimed time and dreams once buried beneath obligation. Family gatherings continued, but Linda's absence carved a painful space. Yet it was a space of autonomy, not compromise. Linda's isolation was complete, the consequences of her actions fully realized in social and financial exile. I reflected quietly, the scars of betrayal still there but softened by growth. I was the invisible one for too long, I whispered to myself. But now I'm seen, and I'm free. The future stretched before me, uncertain yet bright, a testament to the strength born from breaking free, setting boundaries, and choosing self-worth over silence.